I watched my grandmother turn her back on my 7-year-old son at my father's hospital bedside, and I realized that some people would rather watch their own child die than accept love from someone they deemed unworthy of their family name. The fluorescent lights hummed above us. My father's breathing was shallow, mechanical. And my son, my beautiful brave boy, stood there with his arms still outstretched, confusion flooding his dark eyes. That was the moment I understood that blood doesn't make you family. Courage does. Let me take you back 6 months, before everything fell apart and came back together in the most unexpected way. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I'm a high school English teacher in Portland. I've always been ordinary, the kind of person who drinks too much coffee, grades papers until midnight, and dreams of summer vacations that never feel long enough. My life was predictable, comfortable, safe. Until it wasn't. My husband David and I had been trying to have children for 8 years. 8 years of negative pregnancy tests, failed IVF cycles, and watching our savings disappear into medical bills that promised hope but delivered heartbreak. We'd had 3 miscarriages. The last one nearly destroyed our marriage. We stopped talking about it. We stopped talking about much of anything. Then one Tuesday afternoon, my principal called me into her office. She looked nervous, which was unusual for a woman who once broke up a cafeteria fight between 2 football players without flinching. "Sarah," she said, "there's a situation. A boy in the foster system. His caseworker thinks, well, she thinks you might be a good fit." I remember laughing. Not because it was funny, but because the universe has a strange sense of humor. We'd given up on becoming parents, filed away the dream like old tax returns you keep but never look at. But then I met Lucas. He was 6 years old, with eyes that had seen too much and a smile that appeared so rarely it felt like witnessing a miracle. His mother had died of an overdose. His father was unknown. He'd been bounced between 5 foster homes in 2 years. The caseworker warned me. He had behavioral issues, trust problems, night terrors. I saw a little boy who needed someone to stay. David was hesitant. My mother was cautiously supportive. But my grandmother, my father's mother, the matriarch of our family, she made her position crystal clear at Sunday dinner. "Blood is blood," she said, cutting her roast with surgical precision. "That child isn't ours. He never will be." I should have known then. I should have seen the warning signs. But I was drowning in love for this little boy who called me Miss Sarah and asked permission before taking a cookie, who flinched when I raised my hand to brush hair from his face. We adopted Lucas 4 months later. It was the happiest day of my life. My grandmother didn't attend the celebration. The first family gathering after the adoption was Thanksgiving. I'd been nervous for weeks, coaching Lucas on how to address everyone, assuring him that families could be loud and overwhelming but that he was safe, he was wanted, he belonged. We walked into my parents' house with Lucas clutching David's hand. My father, my gentle, kind father who'd never raised his voice at me in 32 years, dropped to one knee immediately. "Hey there, buddy," he said. "I'm Grandpa Tom. I hear you like dinosaurs?" Lucas nodded shyly. "Me too. I've got some books I want to show you." But when my grandmother emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron, she looked right through Lucas like he was invisible. She hugged me. She hugged David. She walked past my son without a word. Lucas's hand went cold in mine. "Grandma," I said, my voice tight. "This is Lucas, your great-grandson." She finally looked down at him. Her expression was carved from ice. "Hello," she said. Then to me, quietly but clearly, "I need to talk to you, alone." In the kitchen, she didn't mince words. "That child is not my great-grandson. You can call him whatever you want, but he doesn't carry our blood. He doesn't carry our name, not really. I won't pretend otherwise. He's my son," I said, my hands shaking. "He's a foster child you took in. That's charity, Sarah. It's admirable. But don't ask me to love him like I love you." The words cut deeper than any knife. But what broke me was walking back to the living room and seeing Lucas sitting perfectly still on the couch, hands folded in his lap, eyes downcast, every survival instinct activated, making himself as small and unnoticeable as possible. He'd heard everything. After that day, my grandmother maintained a civil distance. She was never cruel to Lucas's face, but she never acknowledged him either. No birthday cards. No Christmas presents. When we visited, she'd greet David and me, then ignore our son entirely. My father was furious. He'd argued with her countless times, threatened to cut her off. But she was his mother, stubborn as stone, and he couldn't seem to change her mind. "Give her time," he'd tell me. "She come around." But time was something we were about to run out of. 3 months ago, my father collapsed at work. The diagnosis came fast and brutal: acute liver failure. A lifetime of undiagnosed hepatitis had finally caught up with him. Without a transplant, he had months, maybe weeks. The family mobilized immediately. My mother got tested. So did I, my uncle, my cousin. None of us were matches. My grandmother, at 78, was too old to be considered. We went through the donor registry, but my father's blood type was rare. The waiting list was impossibly long. I watched my father deteriorate day by day. His skin turned yellow. His mind grew foggy. The man who taught me to ride a bike, who'd walked me down the aisle, who'd defended my choice to adopt Lucas, he was slipping away. Lucas noticed everything. "Is Grandpa Tom going to die?" He asked me one night, his voice small in the darkness of his bedroom. I wanted to lie. I wanted to protect him. But I promised to always tell him the truth. "He might, sweetheart. Unless we find someone who can help him. Like a superhero. Sort of. Like someone with a superpower we call organ donation." He was quiet for a long moment. "Then, what's an organ?" I explained it as simply as I could. How our bodies have different parts that do different jobs. And sometimes when one part stops working, another person can share theirs. "Could I do that?" he asked. "You're too young, buddy. And you'd need to match Grandpa Tom in special ways." I thought that was the end of it. But Lucas was thinking, planning, being braver than any of us knew. 2 weeks later, Dr. Richardson called me into her office. She was my father's hepatologist, a stern woman who didn't waste words. "Mrs. Mitchell, we have a potential donor." Someone came forward for testing. Hope exploded in my chest. "Who?" "I can't disclose that yet. They requested anonymity until we confirm compatibility. But I need to tell you something unusual." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "The donor is a child, 7 years old. And he's a perfect match." The world tilted. That's impossible." "Children can't donate. Can they?" "In rare cases, yes. A living donor can donate a portion of their liver. Children can donate to adults if the size and compatibility requirements are met. It's uncommon, but it happens." "But who?" "He made me promise not to tell you until he could do it himself." "But Mrs. Mitchell, I need you to understand something. This is an extraordinarily mature decision for a 7-year-old. He came here alone, took the bus, found my office, and asked if he could be tested. He said his grandpa needed him." My heart stopped. "Lucas?" She nodded. I don't remember leaving her office or driving home. I only remember walking into our house and finding Lucas at the kitchen table, carefully coloring a picture of a hospital. "Lucas," I said, my voice cracking. "Did you go to the hospital by yourself?" He looked up, guilty and defiant all at once. "I had to help Grandpa Tom." "Baby, you can't. You could have gotten lost or hurt. Or..." "I took the 44 bus like you showed me. And I was careful." His lower lip trembled. "I just wanted to be useful. I wanted to be real family." I pulled him into my arms and wept. The surgery was scheduled for 10 days later. 10 days of medical consultations, psychological evaluations for Lucas, and family meetings that felt like walking through fire. My grandmother refused to acknowledge what was happening. "This is insane," she told my mother. "You're going to let them cut into that boy?" For Tom? Tom wouldn't want this. But my father did want it. When he was lucid enough to understand, when we told him what Lucas had volunteered to do, he cried. He asked to speak to Lucas alone. I waited outside the hospital room, my ear pressed to the door. "Lucas, buddy, you don't have to do this, but I want to. You're my grandpa. I'm not your real." "Yes, you are." Lucas's voice was fierce. "You showed me your dinosaur books. You taught me to play chess. You came to my school play even when you felt sick. You're my real grandpa. Silence. Then the sound of my father crying. I love you, Lucas. You're the bravest person I've ever met. The day of the surgery arrived. The hospital was cold and too bright. Lucas was terrified. I could see it in the way he held my hand, in the tremor of his smile. But he didn't back down. My grandmother arrived just before they took Lucas back to prep. I hadn't expected her. She stood in the doorway of the waiting room, looking older than I'd ever seen her, her hands clutched around her purse. Lucas saw her. And despite everything, despite months of being ignored, of being made invisible, he walked over to her. Hi, great-grandma, he said softly. I'm going to help Grandpa Tom. Don't worry. He opened his arms for a hug. She stepped back. Not dramatically, not with malice. Just a small instinctive retreat. But it was enough. Lucas dropped his arms. His face crumpled. And for the first time since I'd met him, I saw him truly break. I thought if I saved him you'd love me, he whispered. The waiting room went silent. My grandmother's face drained of color. She looked at this little boy, this tiny brave soul who was about to have his body cut open to save her son, and finally she saw him. Lucas, she breathed. But he was already turning away, walking toward the nurse who'd come to take him to pre-op. He didn't look back. I followed him, leaving my grandmother standing there like a statue. The surgeries took 8 hours. 8 hours of pacing, praying, bargaining with God. David held me. My mother held my grandmother, who hadn't spoken since Lucas walked away. When Dr. Richardson finally emerged, she was smiling. Both surgeries were successful. Tom's accepting the liver beautifully. Lucas is in recovery. He's asking for you. I ran. Lucas was tiny in the hospital bed, pale but awake. When he saw me, he tried to smile. Did it work? He asked. Did I save Grandpa? Yes, baby, yes, you saved him. Good. His eyes drifted closed. Then I'm real family now, right? I kissed his forehead. You were always real family. Always. My father recovered faster than anyone expected. Within weeks, his color returned. His strength came back. He calls it his Lucas liver, says it made him young again. But the real miracle happened 3 days after the surgery. I was sitting with Lucas in his hospital room reading him a story when my grandmother appeared in the doorway. She looked fragile, broken open in a way I'd never seen. May I come in? She asked. Lucas looked at me. I nodded. She approached slowly, like you would a wounded animal. When she reached his bedside, she did something I never thought I'd see. She knelt. At 78 years old, with arthritic knees and a proud back that had never bowed for anyone, my grandmother knelt beside my son's hospital bed. Lucas, she said, her voice raw, I owe you an apology. The biggest apology anyone has ever owed anyone. Lucas stared at her, uncomprehending. I was wrong. I was cruel. I told myself that blood mattered more than love, that biology mattered more than choice. But you chose us, Lucas. You chose to be part of this family. And more than that, you gave up a piece of yourself to save someone who loved you, even when you had every reason to doubt that love was returned by everyone. Tears streamed down her weathered cheeks. You are braver than I have ever been. You are kinder. You are stronger. And you are my great-grandson, not because of blood, but because you earned a place in this family in a way none of us born into it ever had to. You showed us what love really means. She reached out trembling hands. May I hug you now? Please? Lucas looked at me again. I couldn't see through my tears, but I nodded. He leaned forward, wincing at the pain in his abdomen, and let my grandmother embrace him. She held him like she was holding the most precious thing in the world. Because that was 6 weeks ago. Today, Lucas and my father are both home, both healing. My grandmother comes by every single day. She brings Lucas his favorite cookies. She sits with him and reads. She's teaching him to knit, of all things, a family tradition she never taught me but is determined to pass on to him. Last Sunday, we had dinner at my parents' house. As we were leaving, Lucas ran back to hug my grandmother goodbye. She held him tight, kissed the top of his head, and whispered something I barely caught. "Thank you for choosing us. Thank you for teaching me what family means." In the car, Lucas was quiet for a while. Then he said, "Mom, I think Great-Grandma really loves me now." "She does, baby. She absolutely does." "Good," he said, matter of fact. "'Cause I always loved her. Even when she was mean. Is that weird?" I thought about the capacity of children to forgive, to hope, to love despite every reason not to. I thought about how Lucas had saved my father's life not for recognition or reward, but simply because that's what family does. "No, sweetheart," I said. "That's not weird. That's just you being you. That's you being extraordinary." He smiled, that rare, beautiful smile, and went back to looking out the window. I used to think family was about biology, about inheritance, about the things we pass down through generations. But Lucas taught me different. Family is about who shows up, who stays, who's willing to sacrifice, who's willing to change. My grandmother learned that lesson late, but she learned it. And every time I see her hug my son now, really hug him with her whole heart, I'm reminded that it's never too late to choose love over pride. It's never too late to see the hero standing right in front of you. Lucas isn't my adopted son anymore. He's not my foster son. He's not the boy we took in. He's my son, period. And he's the bravest person I know.